The sun beat down mercilessly on the village of Abu Minhaj. The relentless heat seemed to sap the energy from everything it touched, leaving the landscape parched and lifeless. It was 2009, and the searing heat of midday seemed to amplify the stillness that hung heavy in the air. The villagers were accustomed to the harsh climate, but this day felt different, as if the desert itself was holding its breath, a stillness shattered only by the sudden horrified gasp of a young shepherd boy. He had been tending to his flock, his mind wandering in the monotony of the day, when he stumbled upon something that would haunt his dreams for years to come. He had stumbled upon something dreadful hidden amongst the dunes, a body. The sight was so out of place in the vast, empty expanse of the desert that it took him a moment to comprehend what he was seeing. Word spread like wildfire through the village in a place where news traveled slowly. This gruesome discovery ignited a frenzy of speculation and fear. People gathered, their faces a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. The villagers, who had known each other all their lives, now looked at one another with suspicion, wondering who among them could be capable of such a heinous act. The local police arrived, their expressions grim as they cordoned off the area. They had seen their share of tragedies, but this was something different, something that struck at the very heart of their community. The desert sand, usually a symbol of enduring timelessness, was now stained with the dark mark of a crime. The tranquility of the desert had been shattered, replaced by a sense of unease that seemed to permeate the very air. The victim lay sprawled on his back, his lifeless eyes staring up at the unforgiving sky. His body, now a part of the desert landscape, told a silent story of violence and despair. He was young, barely a man, his features contorted in a silent scream of pain. The lines of his face, etched with suffering, spoke of a life cut tragically short. The whispers started, hushed murmurs rippling through the crowd. The villagers exchanged glances, their minds racing with questions and theories. Who was he? And who could have done this? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, as the villagers grappled with the reality of the horror that had invaded their peaceful existence. The mystery of the young man's identity and the circumstances of his death would haunt the village of Abu Minhaj for years to come, a dark shadow cast over the sunlit sands. The village elders gathered, their faces etched with concern. They spoke in hushed tones, trying to make sense of the crime that had shattered their community. Theories abounded, but answers were elusive. The police worked tirelessly, combing the area for clues. Every grain of sand was scrutinized, every piece of evidence meticulously catalogued. They knew that solving this crime would be no easy task, but they were determined to bring justice to the young man who had met such a tragic end. As the investigation continued, the villagers mourned the loss of one of their own. They came together in their grief, finding solace in the shared pain of their community. The desert, once a place of solitude and reflection, had become a symbol of their collective sorrow. As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the sands, a sense of hope began to emerge. The villagers knew that they would never forget the young man who had been taken from them, but they also knew that they would find a way to move forward, to heal and to honor his memory. Life in Abu Minhaj slowly began to return to normal. The villagers resumed their daily routines, but the memory of that fateful day lingered. The desert, with its vast, unchanging landscape, served as a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Under the starry night sky, the village of Abu Minhaj found a semblance of peace. The desert, with its timeless beauty, offered a sense of solace and continuity, and as the villagers looked up at the stars, they knew that they would carry the memory of the young man with them, a reminder of the preciousness of life and the resilience of their community. The whispers soon turned to pronouncements, a murmur of shock and disbelief spreading like wildfire through the small village. As the villagers identified the body, a collective gasp echoed through the crowd. He was Khalil, a quiet young man who kept to himself, known for his gentle demeanor and unassuming presence. Khalil worked tirelessly in the date palm groves, a hard-working and honest soul who never sought attention or trouble. No one could understand why anyone would want to harm him. The villagers were baffled, their minds racing to make sense of the senseless act. The police, led by the seasoned Inspector Rashid, wasted no time. Rashid was a man of action. known for his sharp instincts and unwavering dedication to justice. They began meticulously combing the scene for any shred of evidence, every officer aware that even the smallest clue could be crucial. The desert, however unforgiving, could also be a silent witness. Its vast expanse held secrets, and Rashid was determined to uncover them. Every footprint, every discarded item had the potential to tell a story. The team moved carefully, documenting each piece of evidence with precision. Rashid, a man who had seen his fair share of darkness, surveyed the scene with quiet intensity. His weathered face bore the marks of countless cases, each one leaving its own scar. There was something about the brutality of the crime, the sheer rage evident in the way the body was left, that chilled him to the bone. This was not just a murder, it was a message. This was not just a random act of violence, this was personal. The ferocity of the attack suggested deep-seated anger, a vendetta that had reached its boiling point. The villagers, eager to offer any information, spoke of Khalil's routine, his quiet nature. They described a man who lived a simple life, his days filled with hard work and solitude. They offered theories, suspicions, but nothing concrete. Some whispered of old grudges, others of jealous rivals, but no one had any solid evidence. Rashid listened patiently, knowing that amidst the speculation, a truth lay hidden. He had learned long ago that every rumor, every piece of gossip could hold a kernel of truth. He took meticulous notes, his mind piecing together the fragments of information. Each detail, no matter how small, was a potential lead. Some villagers pointed towards the desert, suggesting that the answer lay somewhere in its vast, unforgiving expanse. Rashid examined each piece of evidence with a critical eye, his experience guiding him through the labyrinth of clues. He pored over a weathered map of the desert, tracing possible routes and hiding places. The desert was a harsh mistress, but Rashid was determined to uncover its secrets. As the sun set, the villagers lit lanterns, their flickering light casting long shadows across the sand. The investigation would continue into the night, for time was of the essence. Rashid gathered his team, their faces illuminated by the lantern's glow. He spoke with determination, outlining their next steps. A villager approached, handing Rashid a piece of cloth. It was stained with blood, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered their peace. Rashid examined the cloth under the lantern's light, his mind racing with possibilities. This could be the breakthrough they needed. His face set with determination, Rashid knew that the path ahead would be difficult. But he was resolute, driven by a sense of duty and a desire for justice. The villagers watched him with hope in their eyes, placing their trust in the seasoned inspector. They believed in his ability to bring the truth to light. With a final glance at the village, Rashid and his team set off into the desert, their lanterns bobbing in the darkness. The investigation was far from over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The desert stretched out before them, a vast and mysterious landscape under a starry sky. It held its secrets close, but Rashid was determined to uncover them no matter the cost. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the dunes, the desert seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick with the weight of the day's events, and the golden hues of the setting sun painted a somber picture over the crime scene. A young officer, his face etched with determination and a hint of anxiety, approached Rashid. His steps were measured, each one crunching softly on the sandy ground as if he was treading on sacred ground. He held up a plastic bag, its contents stark against the fading light. The bag seemed almost out of place, a modern artifact in an ancient landscape, yet it held a story waiting to be told. "Sir," he said, his voice barely a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the desert's silence, "we found this near the body." His eyes met Rashid's, searching for a reaction, a sign of what this discovery might mean. Inside the bag lay a single mud-caked slipper. It was a small, seemingly insignificant item, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 questions. Who did it belong to? How did it end up here? What secrets did it hold? The slipper was worn, clearly well-loved, and utterly out of place in the vast emptiness of the desert. It spoke of a life lived, of journeys taken, and of a connection to the person whose life had been so brutally cut short. Rashid took the bag, his fingers brushing against the rough fabric. He could feel the history embedded in its fibers, the silent witness to a crime that had left the village of Abu Minhaj in shock. This seemingly insignificant item held the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. Rashid examined it carefully, noting the size, the style, the faint traces of a distinctive blue dye on its side. Each detail was a piece of that puzzle, a clue that could lead them to the truth. He knew that this was no ordinary slipper. This was a clue, a beacon in the darkness. The blue dye was particularly intriguing, a rare color in this part of the world, and it could be the key to identifying its owner. This was no ordinary slipper, this was a clue, a beacon in the darkness. Rashid knew that somewhere in Abu Minhaj there was a matching pair, and they held the key to unlocking the mystery of Khalil's murder. Rashid knew that somewhere in Abu Minhaj there was a matching pair, and they held the key to unlocking the mystery of Khalil's murder. The slipper became the focal point of the investigation, a symbol of hope in a case that had seemed hopeless. The slipper became the focal point of the investigation. Officers fanned out across the village, showing it to shopkeepers, questioning families, searching for anyone who recognized the distinctive footwear. The village, usually quiet and serene, buzzed with activity as the search intensified. Officers fanned out across the village, showing it to shopkeepers, questioning families, searching for anyone who recognized the distinctive footwear. The village, usually quiet and serene, buzzed with activity as the search intensified. The villagers, initially wary, began to open up, sharing their stories and suspicions, each one adding a new layer to the investigation. The desert wind seemed to carry a new sense of urgency, whispering the slipper's story. It was as if the very sands were urging them on, pushing them to uncover the truth. Rashid felt a renewed sense of determination. He knew that the answers were out there, hidden in the whispers of the desert and the memories of its people. The slipper was more than just a piece of evidence. It was a link to the past, a connection to the victim, and a beacon of hope for justice. 2 days later, the forensic report arrived on Rashid's desk. He opened it, his brow furrowing as he absorbed the chilling details. Khalil had been stabbed multiple times, his body bearing the marks of a frenzied attack. The report spoke of defensive wounds, a desperate struggle for life against overwhelming aggression. The time of death was estimated to be sometime during the previous night, confirming the villagers' suspicions that Khalil had been murdered after leaving the date groves. The report also revealed something even more disturbing: signs of torture. Khalil had not simply been killed, he had been made to suffer. The brutality of the crime, coupled with the forensic evidence, painted a grim picture. This was not a robbery gone wrong, nor a fight between rivals. This was cold, calculated rage, an act of personal vengeance. The question was, who hated Khalil enough to inflict such suffering, and what had driven them to it?